iPhone R không 15 bên đây Linh.
R XR chứ.
R AIR ấy. Mới ra là
Có tao làm cho tôi sao? Tao hai quả ở đây. Mình tao làm xong rồi rồi đó.
Còn mình giống như các bạn. Giống như các bạn. Mẹ ơi. Đây là giống chung. Cái nào trên sáng đúng không?
Giật có bị sao không ạ?
Thì nó cạnh chính xác rồi nè, không mở đâu đâu. Các bạn đến xem tối hôm qua ai con 14 bỏ đồ kìa.
Không ai cần cái nào đó. Không.
Cái cầm liêu.
Cái một cái bảo đi xem.
Tại hôm qua nó bỏ hay nó cầm liêu.
Nay cầm iPhone đi không?
Không.
Mai cầm liêu cứ lại xem thử xem có con 14 không.
Nó bảo cái lúc qua nó 15 đây.
Nó nhiều khi vậy mà 14. Để xem nếu mà chung con 14 con mua con 14 còn không thì mua 16. Không nhá, chờ tao đi nhá. Em thử đi. Đi biết à? Chả biết rồi. Thôi tao hảo tí chứ 14 đồ đấy nó ngon, chứ 14. Một số thì mình chỉ ép này. Đây. 4 tiền cách. Áo là còn ớt. Chứ sợ đeo không phải đeo tay không được. Đây mua đi. Không thì nhau bữa là tay không phải lúc làm có lúc tay thì biết cái chuyện mới đây không lúc làm biết bác sĩ lúc quay thì có luôn đúng không lúc làm không lúc làm tay đi nó rất nhiều chỉ là tay dày dày mà không tôi thích kiểu nếu mình mua đấy nó làm cách này lúc quay thì những cái đường đen để đi quay của đường khó đúng không đường tận chết ăn cái gì Người Dạ, dạ, con thích người
cảm thấy nó xả đầy
có thể đây cái gì đó cái này màu xanh đấy là vừa to ra nó vừa dày nó có rất nhiều cao như luôn ok mình còn một cái xúc
ra bàn tay cái này không thôi
đi chứ nó bẩn rồi tôi đi cái này bẩn như thế rồi có nước
và buổi được nhìn
đi mắt chỗ nào nó kẹo tưởng nó hết luôn mình đi nữa đi ra cái chợ đấy nó to lắm đúng không?
Stays gentle, regular, and simple rather than harsh, aggressive, or constantly changing. Wash acne-prone skin no more than twice a day, and also after heavy sweating, using a mild cleanser and lukewarm water, because frequent washing, rough scrubbing, and very hot or very cold water can irritate the skin and make acne seem worse. Do not try to squeeze, scrape, or clean out blackheads at home, because that can worsen inflammation and may increase the risk of lasting marks or scarring. Choose oil-free or non-comedogenic skincare, sunscreen, and makeup when possible. Remove makeup before bed, and keep oily hair products away from the face. Over-the-counter ingredients such as salicylic acid can help unclog pores. Adapalene can help prevent clogged pores, and benzoyl peroxide can support acne treatment, but these products can cause dryness or irritation at first. So it makes sense to start slowly, use a light moisturizer if needed, and give the routine time to work, because improvement often takes several weeks rather than happening overnight. If acne becomes painful, widespread, scar-forming, or does not improve after a reasonable trial of self-care, it is sensible to see a dermatologist. And now, with that practical advice folded neatly at the front like a clean towel on a bathroom shelf, let the rest of the evening belong to laughter. Because in a retirement town in coastal Maryland, where every driveway contained at least one folding chair, and every folding chair had heard something confidential, there lived a 79-year-old widow named Beverly June Harkness, who had reached the age where she no longer believed any sentence that began with, "Wouldn't it be charming if?" because such sentences had cost her too much patience over the years. Beverly lived in a pale yellow cottage with white shutters, a blue front door, a porch swing, and a front yard filled with those practical shrubs that look as if they have already voted in local elections. Her late husband, Ray, had been practical in every important matter and catastrophically unserious in one specific area: decorative statuary. He loved it. Not tasteful statuary, not antique garden stone. He loved the sort of figures that make neighbors pause, blink, and decide not to ask questions. Over 38 years of marriage, he acquired a cast concrete turtle with sunglasses, a duck in rain boots, a frog holding a banjo, and, his proudest purchase, a cement lobster wearing a captain's hat. He bought the lobster at a church rummage sale after mistaking the bidding sheet for a casserole sign-up and deciding, once his name was on the page, that dignity required commitment. Beverly laughed so hard she had to sit down on the porch step while he carried it home in both arms like a rescued official. The lobster was set beside the hydrangeas and named Admiral Clancy, because Ray said no self-respecting crustacean in a captain's hat should answer to anything casual. The years rolled by. Storms came and went. Children grew up. Grandchildren tracked sand through the hallway and denied it with criminal confidence. Ray died, which was not funny at all, and the house turned quieter in the deep, upholstered way that houses do after one person's habits vanish from them. Yet Admiral Clancy remained beside the hydrangeas, hat slightly tilted, claws open in permanent diplomacy, somehow ridiculous enough to keep grief from becoming too proud of itself. Beverly never moved him. She dusted the hat. She once repainted the blue band with more care than she gave most people's opinions. She told a delivery driver not to lean a box against him because that lobster has seniority. Her two closest friends were Clara Beth Morgan, age 73, retired church secretary, owner of a floral handbag with the carrying capacity of a regional emergency office, and a woman who could detect gossip in the atmosphere, the way sailors detect rain, and Walter Griggs, age 82, former hardware clerk, amateur chess tyrant, and a man who trusted cast iron, black coffee, and his own instincts more than he trusted modern software, life coaches, or any adult who said lean into it. Every Thursday morning, the three met at Marigold Cafe, where the pancakes were larger than reason, the coffee was powerful enough to improve weak morals, and the waitress, a broad-shouldered saint named Judy, called everybody honey in a tone that suggested affection and rule enforcement were not mutually exclusive. One Thursday in early April, Beverly arrived 11 minutes late with an expression so sharp that Clara Beth set down her toast before taking a bite, and Walter lowered his mug without drinking. "That face," Clara said, narrowing her eyes, "means either the churchwomen have launched another project or somebody has touched your yard." Beverly sat down, set her purse beside her, and said, "Someone has made my lobster the official symbol of reopening your—" Clara Beth blinked twice. Judy stopped in the aisle with the coffee pot held at chest level like evidence in a trial. "Your what?" Clara asked. Beverly reached into her purse and removed a glossy flyer. Across the top, in seafoam script so enthusiastic it should have been regulated, were the words, "Tides of Companionship, an evening for new beginnings." Beneath a watercolor harbor and two extremely suspicious seagulls sat a color photo of Admiral Clancy, hat straight, claws lifted, with the caption, "Our beloved guide to second chances." Judy put the coffee pot down, as if it suddenly required witness protection. "Not the lobster." "Exactly the lobster," Beverly said. "Who has never guided anyone anywhere, except toward a conversation I did not ask to have." Now, younger people might imagine this was just some local silliness. Younger people do not understand retirement communities. In a retirement community, silliness is not a passing mood, it is a startup. It acquires forms, volunteer captains, and matching napkins. By the time the eggs arrived, half the diner knew that Beverly June Harkness's decorative lobster had somehow become the face of a senior companionship event. A man at the counter said he always found the lobster quietly reassuring. A woman by the pie case said the event committee had finally crossed into weaponized cuteness. Judy brought Beverly extra bacon for structural support. Clara flipped over the paper placemat and lightly inside bacon wrote, "Lobster matter," in large block letters. "We're investigating," she said. Beverly sighed. "We're eating breakfast." "Both can happen," Walter replied, which was the kind of sentence older people use when meddling has already become public duty in their minds. By 10:30, they were standing in Beverly's front yard beside the hydrangeas. The place where Admiral Clancy normally stood was empty, not tilted, not chipped, gone. Beverly stopped cold. "No," she said. Clara looked where she was looking and clutched her bag. Walter took off his glasses, polished them slowly, put them back on, and gave the scene the weary stare of a man too old to be surprised and too upright not to be annoyed. "Well," he said, "that improves the seriousness." Clara found a scrap of pale ribbon caught in the hydrangea stem. Walter found narrow wheel tracks near the driveway. Beverly stood with one hand on her hip, looking at the blank patch where Ray's ridiculous lobster had stood for years, and said, "They have abducted a memorial shellfish for emotional marketing." Clara wrote that down immediately. By noon, the entire neighborhood knew. At the mailbox kiosk, Mrs. Fenwick asked whether the event would still proceed without the lobster gentleman. At the pharmacy, a cashier said her aunt had already bought a ticket because the lobster made the whole thing feel less sad and more coastal. At chair yoga, two women paused in the middle of a stretch to ask whether there would still be shrimp, which Beverly considered indecent. Even the groundskeeper, Mateo, who had built a successful life around staying out of resident folklore, shook his head and said, "The lobster? That's too much." Beverly's daughter called from Richmond, already laughing so hard she had to begin twice. "Mom," she said, "why is Dad's yard lobster an emotional outreach?" "Because this town is one shell motif away from collapse," Beverly replied. "Are you upset?" "I am offended on principle and interested in names." The first useful clue came from the woman at the copy shop, who lowered her voice and said, "I probably shouldn't mention this, but I saw Brenda Nell and Carol Faye yesterday buying blue ribbon, battery candles, and a little plastic crown. They had a picture of a lobster and were asking whether silver lettering felt hopeful or too nautical." That was enough. Brenda Nell chaired the Social Enrichment Committee. Carol Faye handled decorative messaging, which sounded harmless until one learned she had once put battery-operated lanterns around the blood pressure station because she said wellness should feel immersive. Together, they were exactly the sort of women who would kidnap a porch lobster, give it an emotional mission, and still think of themselves as helpers. So by 1:30, Beverly, Clara, and Walter were at the Marina Hall. It had already been transformed into the sort of atmosphere only retirees and discounted chiffon can produce. Small tables with sea glass centerpieces stood beneath strings of warm lights. Mason jars glowed. A violin playlist sighed softly from the speakers. And at the front of the room, On a crate draped in gauzy blue fabric beneath a sign reading, "Open the tideway of your heart," stood Admiral Clancy. He had been polished. His captain's hat had been brushed. Around one claw, someone had tied a satin ribbon with a tiny charm shaped like an anchor. Beverly stopped so abruptly, Clara nearly walked into her. "Now they've formalized him," she said. Walter folded his arms. "This," he muttered, "is why I distrust theme committees." Brenda Nell turned and smiled with the overbright, guilty determination of a woman who knew she had crossed a line but still believed the display was, aesthetically speaking, strong. "Beverly," she said, "I was just about to call you." "Then let us save one another some energy," Beverly replied. "Why is my late husband's decorative lobster wearing symbolic jewelry?" Carol Faye appeared from behind a tray of lemonade and instantly looked like she would willingly move to Ohio if it would end the conversation. Several volunteers nearby, previously pretending to arrange napkins, became absolutely motionless, which is one of the highest athletic arts available after 70. Brenda spread her hands. "Now, before you misunderstand, no," Beverly said. "I understand perfectly. You took private property from my yard, accessorized it, and assigned it romantic significance." Clara opened her notebook. Walter made a low sound of approval. Brenda tried the usual excuse. "We only borrowed him." Borrowed contains asking. "We meant to ask. You did not. We thought you'd be pleased." "By unauthorized lobster. Courtship?" Carol Faye tried the softer route. "He just projects such steady hope," Walter snorted. "He is cement and red." At that exact moment, Mrs. Pendleton from the community board entered carrying printed programs and asked the doomed ceremonial question. "What seems to be the issue?" Clara answered, before the room could fully inhale. "The issue is that Brenda Nell and Carol Faye have apparently raided Beverly's front yard and laundered a decorative lobster into romance administration." The room broke instantly. One volunteer near the punch bowl laughed so hard she had to sit down. Another covered her mouth and failed on contact. Even Mrs. Pendleton turned toward the windows for a long restorative breath. Beverly, however, stayed very calm, which at her age was never a good sign for anyone else. "Take the ribbon off," she said. Carol did. "Take the sign down." Brenda did. "And if there are commemorative napkins, keychains, or name cards with his face on them, I suggest immediate surrender." There were commemorative napkins, 2 full packets. Walter held one up, looked at the tiny printed lobster on the corner, and said, "Good Lord," Brenda apologized. Then apologized more correctly. Then finally admitted the truth. Ticket sales had been weak,